Good morning to you all and welcome back to the DIY Global Summit webinar series. I'm Ken Hughes, delighted to have you back, and I'm again, as always, honored with the invitation to monitor or to MC these sessions. Today we're going to get into some data. I love data. We all love data. We all love the numbers. We've had an amazing couple of years in terms of pandemic, post-pandemic, and of course the question we all want to know is, where is it going? It's a bit crystal ball gazing, but understanding what's happened, what 2022 was like, is really, really important to us. So before we get into the data, just a couple of reminders. Obviously, the Global DIY Summit is going to be the biggest and best ever this year. We have a limited number of spaces left. So the early bird tickets, just to remind you, close on the 15th of March, which is next week. So if you want to save €300 off the price of the ticket, the early bird shuts on the 15th. So please do that. And honestly, there's only a very few spaces left anyway. It's going to be the biggest and best event that has ever been held for the DIY Global Summit. There's a huge appetite for networking, for data, and for conversations. So please do get involved. It's going to be a fantastic event in Berlin on the 14th to the 16th. Now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our guests today from DIY International. Both Michael Ray Ostrander and Michael Gaynor are going to join us. Pop up on the screen. There you are, and all your magazines behind you to prove that you do actually work for DIY International. So you're going to bring us through some data today. Anyway, firstly, where are you today? Where are you joining us from today?
I'm joining you from Ettlingen, which is a little town near Karlsruhe in Germany, in the Rhine Valley.
Okay, excellent. Well, you're very welcome. And considering that you represent DIY International, I feel it's my duty to ask from a personal perspective how DIY skilled you both are. Any DIY DNA in your blood? Any project that you've done the last while that you're proud of yourselves in your own homes?
Yes, I did something not in the winter, but in summer in our balcony, because I'm living in the inner city of Karlsruhe, and we have just two small balconies, and I really love having plants in the city and doing something for the bees. And my wife and me, we decided that she is responsible for the urban jungle inside, and I'm responsible for the outside. So that's what I do. Next week I'm going to start.
Hang on. Rewind. She's got the responsibility for the entire apartment, and she just gave you the balcony.
It's a bit this picture, yes, exactly.
How about you, Michael? What about you?
Secret of a good marriage,
Yeah, true. What about your DIY skills, Michael?
Well, I mainly do DIY in the form that I remodel furniture. So, for example, for many of my furniture in my home, I remodeled it myself. So, for example, really designed it or totally made it up myself, or in most cases, bought it used and then, work it up again, like taking down the painting, everything, and also repairing it a little bit, so it all involves kind of woodwork, more or less. Yeah.
Cool. Upcycling. I like it. Very sustainable. Okay, but let's get into DIY. We can't assume most people obviously watching this today will know who DIY International are, but let's not assume. So do you want to give us a quick kind of 30 seconds as to who DIY International are and what you do?
Yeah, DIY International is a magazine covering the global home improvement and garden industry. When I say magazine, I mean we stopped printing it last year because we thought in this time it could be a good idea to publish it just online. And we have an online service coming out every week, and we are part of the Däne Verlag, publishing house of Däne Verlag. Our core competence is a home improvement in the DIY industry, with our magazine DIY Fachmagazin, renowned in Germany, Switzerland, and Austria. Yeah, that's us.
That's you. Okay, and today, what you're going to bring us through is the Home Improvement Report 2022 from DIY International Association with HEMA and Edrigin, is the data from 2022. Now, I'm aware that the report isn't yet finalized. Obviously, it's very soon after 2022, so it would be a bit early to have all the data, but you've got enough kind of insights, I think, to put a pretty interesting presentation together as to where things are going and what happened last year. And I know John Herbert will probably have a bit more information by the time we do the conference in Berlin. I think Am I right? September maybe is the time for the final publication. But anyway, you've done some work for us preliminary, which are really appreciated. And thank you so much for joining us to bring us through that. And so everyone, I think, is waiting to hear what 2022 was like. So listen, I'm going to hand it over to you. You guys take us through the presentation. And then if you'll join us afterwards, anyone watching, please pop some questions into the question box or the comments, and we'll pick them up and we'll address them, because I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions about the data you're about to present. So screen share over to you. Grab the screen share there, put up your PowerPoint, and I'll leave it to you, and I'll see you in about 20 minutes time for questions.
So thank you to all of you for joining us. Michael and me, we are going to present you first insights in the home improvement report worldwide, which is produced in close collaboration with Edragen and HEMA, and we will see some first figures. As you know, we have a tough year behind us, and the situation is remaining challenging. So we thought it might be a good idea to have a closer look on what happened last year and on the figures that reflect these developments. So Edragen decided to focus a bit more on this topic, together with the publishing house of Dena Verlag and DIY International. Why us? I just talked about we are specializing in this market. So what we are going to talk about is some growth rates from leading companies all over the world. And let's start with Europe. The top three in Europe are Adeo, the group Adeo with Leroy Merlin as the market leader in France. They have other sales channels like Weldom, or professional sales channels like Bricomat or Obramat. And we think, based on what we have seen these last years, we think that they increased their sales quite strongly, having an increase that could be in double-digit growth rates and low double-digit growth rates, perhaps. It's an estimation from our side. From Kingfisher, so far, we just have the first 9 months, and we saw a decrease of nearly 3%. Overall, it's the overall figure. And from Obi, we know that they more or less stayed at the same levels they had the year before, and which is quite interesting, because Obi had to leave Russia after the beginning of the war in the Ukraine, and they coped with this situation, with this difficult situation, and they had 27 stores in Russia, but nevertheless they managed to maintain the sales level more or less at the same level. And you have to have in mind that the inflation rate in Europe was more than 9%, 9.2% in the Eurozone. So you have always have to have in mind that you have to compare the sales figures with the inflation we saw in the different countries. So let's have a look on Germany. The top 6 German DIY store operators are Obi and Bauhaus at the top, and you can compare the growth rates, which are quite different. At the top of the growth rates, we have Hagebau, the retail section of Hagebau, which is a cooperative. They do also in the builders merchants business, but they are in the retail, they grew by nearly 12%. Hornbach and Globus by more than 9%. But once again, inflation rate in Germany last year was nearly 8%. These are the sales for the top German DIY store operators. And these are the sales of the German operations. And if you have a closer look on this list, you will notice a little sensation. So this is a Bauhaus caught up with Obi. And Obi was used to be the market leader for many, many years in Germany. And it seems that now the position of the market leader is shared by Obi and Bauhaus. On the next position, we see Hornbach. Hornbach grew by more than 9%, and then Rewe with the TUM sales channel. And the top is the growth rate of the top 6 was nearly 8% in Germany. For example, 2 examples from France and from the UK. Les Mousquetaires with Bricomarché, Bricorama, and they grew by more than 2%, nearly 3%. But once again, in France, inflation rate was more than 4%. The same picture in the UK. Wickes had a growth rate by more than 3%, but the inflation rate was doubled as double high. In the Nordics, we have once more a mixed picture with Byggmax based in Sweden. They decreased their sales last year, whereas the Kesko Group in total had a slight increase. But in Finland, you have to compare the Finnish Kesko figures with the inflation rate of more than nearly 7%. And in the other countries, you see the Kesko Group performed in different ways. When it comes to North America, we see that market leader and the global market leader, Home Depot, they are engaged in not only in the US, but also in Canada and Mexico, grew their sales by 4%, which is a lot, but which is just a half of the inflation rate in the US. Lowe's number 2 in worldwide, and in the US just had 0.8% growth rate. There's a big winner when it comes to the growth rate. This is Tractor Supply, and it's a question how to interpret this figure, because perhaps this high growth rate of Tractor Supply could have to do with the shift of the consumers' behaviors or consumer preferences, because Tractor Supply is not a typical DIY store. They are based in rural zones. Could have to do with consumer behavior changing. In Canada, we brought here the figures of Canadian Tire, a bit below the inflation rate in Canada. And South America, you have the 2 leading companies, which are Falabella with the Sodimac sales channel, and Cencosud with the Easy stores. In total, they grew, but you see a very mixed picture when it comes to compare the different countries where Falabella and Cencosud are engaged. And you have also to have in mind that inflation rate in Argentina used to be very, very high the last years, and of course in 2022 as well. In the Asia Pacific zone, we have one big winner, we can say it's Bunnings. These growth rates refer to the whole year 2022, and compared to the inflation rate, they're above that. In Southeast Asia, I would like to draw your attention to Mr. DIY. Mr. DIY, based in Malaysia, is a company which does a lot for expanding, and not only in the Southeast Asian region, but also in Europe. You know that they have the first stores in Spain and in Turkey as well, and it's supposed that they would like to expand to Europe. Yeah, so to sum it up, from a global point of view, the industry coped with a very difficult situation, and everyone in the industry underlines the challenging conditions the industry had to face last year. But these partly high sales increases have to be seen against the background of often very high inflation rates. So the sales are more or less price driven or inflation driven. Perhaps afterwards we have time to discuss a bit more how the DIY retailers worldwide reacted on the short and the long term. So far, for example, we didn't talk about e-commerce, we didn't talk about the importance of stores and sales areas of new formats. But now I would like to hand on over to my colleague, Michael, who will give you some insights on the home improvement report.
Yes, thank you very much, Rainer. Yeah, and also welcome to all. Oh, I'm sorry. Welcome to all of you all around the globe. Yes, just as an introduction, I'm responsible for the statistics department here at the Dana Publishing House. That's why I'm also sitting here today, and I'm also responsible for the organizing and also the figures for the new Home Improvement Report Worldwide 2023. The reason why we do this now is in the past it has been not done by us. This is the first year we're gonna produce the report in close collaboration with Edra, Jin, and Tima. I will go more into detail at the end of my presentation, but just as information for you why we are sitting here today. And we also had in the past published a lot of the data, for example, in the DIY retailer and also statistics materials. So that's why we were chosen, and it's a really deep honor for us to have the possibility to produce this report now for the first year in close collaboration with the associations. What I will be talking about today is what will be new about the report. So the first 3 points of my presentation are going to be what's new and additional. Then I will introduce a new method we are going to use to break down the national markets into 3 markets and what's behind it. What's the idea behind of that? And that we have the goal of more transparency for the report that's going to be published then at the end later this year, and how the continuity is still going to be there to the former report. So first about what's going to be new and additional. We're going to have new chapters in the new report. For example, we will have included a focus on the Asia Pacific region, also focus on Africa. And as Rainer has already mentioned, inflation is really a big part of the picture for 2022 and presumably also for 2023. So that's also why we're going to focus more on that and include an overview of the inflation, so readers will it's easier for the reader to interpret the data. And we altogether we have a bigger part of more global analysis as in the past. We're going to include a new management summary. I hope all of you know what's behind of that. And we have a display of the inflation development for every covered country. Yeah. And we're going to include a totally new layout, which will hopefully make it more easy and more accessible for the reader to get the information and the data. So, and this is just a draft. So not think about like this is the end. As Ken already mentioned, we are still in the procedure of collecting data and working on the report, but this is a draft of what, for example, the new page for the single countries will look like. But if you look closer, it's just a dummy page. So don't think like the numbers are real. It's just a dummy page, but to give you shortly in kind of first impression what it's going to look like, and that it's a new layout. Yeah. So what's the new really big thing in the new report is that we are trying to break down the national markets into free markets. Yeah. The reason is that we have to deal with the fact that we don't get data from all the companies around the globe, and that there is no comparable statistics method right now worldwide that delivers information, but still we want to have solid information and on the same side deliver to the reader a picture about the whole DIY market and home improvement market. So that's why we split it up into the DIY market. The DIY market will cover the DIY retailer sales on a national level, and it's mainly based on company figures, and there will be few to no projections in it. Yeah, so it has a high reliability. And then on the next level, we will have the home improvement market, which will cover also the DIY retailer sales on the national level, and it will include the building materials retail sector and DIY relevant peripheral assortments as well. And we will include also additional data sources, like, for example, from central bank and from national banks, central banks, from government organizations, or from trade and industry associations as well, that publish information, and that will flow into the number as well. But it will for sure be not just be like a copy paste, because you have to interpret it for every national market. And then you have, so to say, few to high projections, yeah, or you have at the same level a medium to high reliability. And in the end, we will have a calculated market figure as well that will also again cover the, you can say, home improvement market and the DIY market, but it's based on a data model. So it's not like we have for every country we publish then the numbers. But again, we do use the empirical data we have for the countries where we can say, okay, this is a solid number for the home improvement market, and based on that number, we make a so-called, or I call it that way, HI for human for home improvement index, and based on that number, taken together with the GDP and the Human Development Index, and we're still working on that, but that at least we will have a number for many countries, hopefully more than 150, 160 countries. But again, and I have to stress this out, this is not comparable to the data we publish for the DIY market, for example, or even for the home improvement market. So you can say for the countries, we have a good databases, you still have a high reliability, but on the same side, you will have a low reliability, but still you have an estimation of what a number could could possibly be. So, and just to make it clear once again, it's like we go from the smaller to the big. So we go from the DIY market, where we have the numbers really with a high reliability, to the home improvement market, and then to the calculated market, which will be the highest figure. And the reader can then stress for it out where his market and his company is based on. Or here again, just to make the idea very clear, we have a high reliability as in the past for the DIY market, and for the home improvement market up to a medium reliability, and then a high to low reliability for the calculated market. And a new thing we want to work on for the new report is to have more transparent report in a way that we will include a new appendix, which will also include a new source list, and as well other information, which I will not stress out here, but will have other information as well in the appendix, and also a new list for the allocation of the distribution line of DIY or home improvement, so the reader can also understand how we came up with this figure. Yeah, and we are also very interested to keep also a continuity to the former report. So all the data from before is included, and we have more. We have again the 4 sections like in the past. We have at least the 53 covered countries, but now we have, instead of only the top 10 covered DIY retailers in detail, we will have the top 20 worldwide. And yeah, at this point, it's really important for me to stress out, we work in close collaboration with ITRA, GIN, and HEMA. So on a weekly, monthly basis right now, also in the past when the whole process started. And we are really honored to produce this report together with them. And yes, right now we are in the process of the data collection. So that's why I'm calling on all the DIY retailers, especially the members of ITRA GIN, please contribute this report for 2023, because it's also good if we have solid figures that will then be good for the whole industry. Yeah, and if you are wondering how is it available for you, it will be available for ITRA, GIN, and HEMA members, and it will also be available via Dana Verlag. And at the moment, we plan for September 23 to have it ready. So thank you very much. You want to end, maybe, or should I say this? I don't know.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much, guys. Can you knock off your
No, just I'm sorry. we didn't spoke about this. I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you very much. We just wanted to hint you to URLs. The one thing is, if you want to have further information on the report, you can go on www.diyinternational.com/home improvement report 2023. And if you don't know, we have an international newsletter we publish daily. It's for free, and you can also enlist on diyinternational.com. Thank you very much.
Okay, you got snuck that bit in right at the end. That was fantastic. Really, really good. My God, so much data and so many questions. So if you can get ready for a long Q&A session. You stirred the bee's nest here and a few things. Okay, first, and this is a really interesting question. And and some of these questions, by the way, I think you will just have an opinion on. It may not be in the data because, as you said, early days processing all the data, and some of these questions are broader than maybe the data shows you right now. But look, opinions are interesting as well. First one from David is: do you think the inflation has affected the DIY industry in the same way as the food industry? So, like from a consumer point of view, obviously inflation and price increases, and there's a significant pressure on the food industry. Do we see the same in the DIY industry in terms of the effects of inflation?
Of course, we see on the one hand the price-driven sales growth, yes, and we see on the other hand that there's one big question is how the consumers will react on this situation. Will they give their money spendings more to more DIY activities, because perhaps they try to save energy, for example, which is one big issue, or won't they do that? Yeah? And so it's the big buzzword in the moment is the uncertainty, because we do not really have indications how the end consumer will react on that.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, certain sectors. So yeah, maybe it's lighting and energy get the spend, and maybe bathroom doesn't because they use that one to travel on a holiday.
but
Yeah,
I think to be honest, I don't think that it has that deep effect like for the food market, because in now with the Russian aggression on Ukraine, you had a mainly inflation on the energy market, and connected with that also on for fertilizers, for example. And if you take into account that the assortment in a supermarket is, I think, more influenced by fertilizers and also by energy than you need it for the DIY sector. But I think it's just a slight difference maybe. So I still think it has a big impact, and you can speak with many CEOs. I think they tell you the same. Yeah.
And one strong impact is concerning the discussions between manufacturers and the retailers. Of course, these discussions are not the easiest ones in these times. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because when we show growth figures, of course, you know, you're showing value figures, and within those, I presume, you know, there's price increases potentially. Which leads us on to the next question from Oliver, which is a really good question. Actually, I'm sure everyone is probably thinking it. You know, some companies are presenting their figures in a 3-year like for like because of what happened during 21 and 20. So the figures that you're showing us in the 22 report, are they 3-year like-for-like figures? Or are they 21 versus 22 figures? What are we looking at? And is it fair to look at it that way? Should we be looking at it both ways? Well, you know, I'm sure you had this debate around the table. What do you think?
Well, right now it's not because of the space we have planned, but so it's gonna be the numbers for 2021 to 2022, because you have to keep in mind we are covering way more than 450, I suppose, companies all around the globe, and also a section where it's then summed up together for every country or every national market. And then again, with the 3 different markets, it's going to be really tough. But we haven't erased that. We already discussed it. And for example, for the German statistics, we also publish about the German and also European market. We did it that way last year. So we compared the numbers to a 2 or 3 year period, because it makes way more sense with first the COVID boom you had in many countries, also Germany, but also in the US and so on, for the DIY sector. And now the thing with the inflation, and also that people don't spend that much anymore. It makes more sense, and we maybe, but right now it's not planned.
Yeah, but it's actually a good way to keep in mind as we all interpret these figures. So if I'm looking at, you know, the OB and the Kingfisher slide you showed earlier on about kind of flat or maybe even declining, you have to process those with, yeah, well, maybe that's because 2021 was a fantastic year of a really, really strong performance because of what happened. And 2020 was actually quite a good year, just not as strong as the unique thing that happens. But you need to remember that, particularly for this report. Okay, so
in the comparison from year by year, we have also have in mind that the lockdown situations changed from country to country.
They did.
Yeah, this also is one aspect.
So it's a messy way. It's not as clear as reports used to be. I get that. Yeah, that is true. And then, do you have any information? And this is maybe a bit too granular at this point. Do you have any information on the average spend in 22 versus 21? Is there any information on kind of just average ticket spend?
No, because we have no ready figures for even one national market.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
So it's not really ready. Yeah,
I think that was a bit granular.
We are at the beginning of March, so some companies have even published this.
Have your question, good. This is a German specific question. Do you think there's any German retailers, this is from Patrick, that has coped better with inflation than other areas of the world? Like, is there a reason when you showed the German retailer, it seems that, you know, you were coping better than other markets, perhaps? Do you think any particular reason for that? Do you think that the Germans are coping with inflation better than the rest of us?
as the Germans say, they continue to invest in their sales areas. They continue to open new stores and big stores, and they continued to invest more in the online activities. Of course, they're a bit behind, yeah, as an industry nearly worldwide, but they really focused on improving their capacities and their knowledge and the activities in the online and the e-commerce market. That could be one reason. And they focused on improving their sales areas, their stores, and their formats.
And one reason also could be, but it's just a could be. Germany was was most hit by the energy crisis in 2022, and DIY retailers also started just after a few weeks, also focusing selling things to make your house or your home more energy efficient and make it better heating, for example, and so on, or even install a wood-driven oven. Yeah. So things like that. But I mean, it's also the thing is also Germany is a quite developed market. Yeah. And if you, for example, compare to the US also did quite well. Yeah. If you make an average for all the companies who are active in the DIY sector in the US, they also coped quite well, yeah, with the inflation thing. So I think it has more to do with whether it's a more industrialized or more or less developed DIY market that copes better than when you have countries which are not that way developed in a DIY sense, that have to struggle more, or even are way better off, like Do Home, for example, which is in Southeast Asia or in Thailand. Yeah, so it's more like more stable, you can say.
Yeah, I like that point about maybe the Germans just were to market on that energy piece first. And it is true, actually, in DIY retail, we can be quite poor at prompting the consumers to what they should be doing. I mean, even in the pandemic, I remember walking to DIY stores and some of them had done significant in-store bills around paint, this is the time, and prompting the customer to take the action. Others were just hoping that the customers would be bored at home and come, and buy something. And the same with energy, the potential for a significant spend on insulation and other lighting and all that is huge. But unless we actually activate that at the store level for someone who's come in to buy one thing and then to really showcase. So some retailers are doing a great job of that and some aren't. So yeah, I think the sale is still there. Okay, next question. When you were showing inflation in Switzerland, it was markedly lower than the rest of Europe. And the question here from Fran is, in your opinion, then, do the sales in Switzerland show us a better insight into real sales change because inflation is so low? And what can we gather from that, maybe? Any opinions on that?
Oh, difficult to say. Yeah. Once more, you should compare it with the different lockdown situations we had in 2021 exactly. And the one were not at the same time as in Germany. In Germany, for example, we had at the beginning of 2021 a lockdown, which impacted the home improvement, but not the garden market. And that could be one reason.
I also, and yeah, mainly for Switzerland is really like also if you take the German figures that are published from the German trade organization, the BHB, and when you saw this for the last 2 years, there was also kind of a shift between the development in Germany and Switzerland, or also Austria and Switzerland, due to the COVID restrictions that were shifted. But altogether, you also have to keep in mind, Germany we have the inflation from the ECB, and Switzerland has its own currency and its own inflation, and it's not that much.
Factors.
Yeah, in fact. Yeah.
We're going to come back to this again and again in this report, I think, because what happened in each individual country from a lockdown point of view was just so different. It's really difficult to start comparing and contrasting things country by country. Okay, next question. Can you share any information about particular categories of goods that sold well last year in 2022? That's from Suzanne. So is it too early to be looking at the category level in terms of what particular categories within home and garden did very well in 2022?
We do not have these figures by ourselves, because we do not ask the store operators to share these figures with us. But we know that some assortments grew very well, and some others not. And for example, for the garden furniture, the stores, the retailers thought that they could sell more, and they didn't. They calculated with some high demand, and this demand didn't came to their stores. Yeah. So whereas the garden section more or less was stable. So, and I think the painting assortment as well.
Okay, and again, that makes sense when you think about it. Like if we all bought garden furniture in 2020 and 2021, which is what we did because we couldn't go anywhere, understandably 2022 isn't going to be a great year for garden furniture, and the same maybe for paint as well. In fact, Dimitri just jumped in there with a comment on the question we had about ticket price, the average spend. Just a comment that the Belgian average ticket's up 15%, which is interesting, So I mean, the average spend is up in certain places despite inflation. Okay, next question from Eric. Have the sales in 2022 demonstrated significant growth for, and again, this might be a bit granular for you guys at this stage, I'm aware it's early in the report, the difference between direct to consumer as into consumer and to pro. So to the trade and to the consumer, do we have any understanding of sales growth difference? Is the sales growth coming more from the consumer end than the pro end, or vice versa?
I don't think we have a way to really differentiate that, to be honest, because we mainly ask the figures for the whole sales from a company. And right now we don't have that many numbers. For example, if you say more pro people get to companies for building material, for example, So right now we don't have many numbers for companies like that. And you could only read something out of the data we have from the companies who are mainly focused on the DIY sector. For sure, they also have pro customers, for sure,
but we see
if you know something, say it. I don't.
We see that the retailers enlarge their pro areas, they enlarge their pro business. So it seems that the professional business gets more and more interesting and more important for them, for the retailers, which are normally engaged in the end consumer business.
Close to the pulse. It's interesting. Richard wants to know if online sales stabilized since that incredible growth in 21 and 20. Had they stabilized in 2022? Do we have any ability to look at the data from an online versus store, or again, is that too granular for now?
In Germany, the online sales decreased last year, but it decreased in the whole market, not only in the home improvement market, but also in the, for example, fashion or in the other segments.
An incredibly high base.
Exactly. Yeah. But the decrease had happened more in the pure player segment and not in the connected retail segment. So as far as we know, the connected retail, which means the companies with physical stores and having their online business, they cope better with that.
Okay. And the last question, because I can't keep you here all day, from Heidi is, in your opinion, what is the biggest trends in the DIY industry that are emerging? It's a crystal ball question, but you're looking at the data, you're looking at by country, even accidentally, you must start to form some kind of opinions on what are the biggest trends. Anything emerging in the early times of putting this report together that is clear?
The biggest
trend.
The biggest trend. Oh, okay.
Biggest trend.
The biggest trend, I think the biggest trend in the retail industry is that the retailer rediscover their stores and the sales area, and they do more for remodeling and do more for innovating their sales area.
Okay.
And the other trend, I think, is that you really have to keep in mind that when you have the numbers for the sales of the average market and every also national market summed up together, and you look at it from like 2015 to 2019, and then you take the big developments in 2020, 21, 22 now, which we are covering in the report. You have to keep in mind that if you take that line from 2015 to 2019, the whole industry, although it's suffering, some companies are decreasing even, or even are below the inflation line from their sales in this last year, we are still on a good development. Yeah. So, but right now it's really tricky because you have so many external factors that are coming into it, like we already spoke about, inflation and so on. But it's still a good trend. And I also think with COVID and so on, people still have more the opinion of investing more into their home than before.
Yeah, I think it's a very difficult year to sit down with the data and present to your board. You know, if you say we're at 4% growth, and then someone puts their hand up and said, yeah, but inflation's at 8%, so that's awful. And then at the same time, you can say, yeah, but that 4% growth is often in an incredible 2021 that was kind of false in a way. So maybe we should compare 2019 to 2022. And there's so many factors with the, as you say, with Russia and Ukrainians, and you know, so there is just so many factors to it. It's difficult, like to like is difficult. I think every company will have different ways of looking at that, different opinions of how they should match the figures of previous versus now. But look, best of luck with compiling the rest of the report. Thank you so much for joining us so early. We're very aware it's early days, and so we knew we put you under a little bit of pressure to put some things together for us early. But I know we're all looking forward to September when the final report comes out. Again, I'll reiterate your point about collaboration on your last slide. You know, these things don't work unless everyone gets involved. So for the Edrigine members who are providing data, thank you so much. For those who are in the process of, thank you too. Rainer, Michael, thank you so much for the effort of putting on the presentation together. It was a joy to meet you, and I'm sure I'll see you in Berlin in June. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
And on that, so the 14th to 16th of June is fast approaching, 3 months left for the biggest 2023 Global DIY Summit event for this year. Again, as I said at the outset, if you don't have your ticket yet, you have only about a week left to get an early bird ticket. Those early bird tickets stop selling on 15th of March. And the other thing with sponsors, of course, because we're bringing, you know, all of who's who together in Berlin for the global DIY industry, of course, sponsors are eager to put their products and services in front of those people. And there's only very few sponsorship spots left. So if you were thinking about taking this amazing opportunity to meet anyone actually in the DIY industry, now would be the time to contact the team at the Global DIY Summit and get one of those last sponsorship spots. So that data was really interesting, but we have some fantastic series again in the next couple of weeks. Our next one is on the 24th of March, entitled Private Label, How and Why. And Jim English of Home Depot fame, I'm sure many of you know him, will be interviewing Francisco Torres from Solimar. And so do join us for that on the 24th of March. And then the next one's on the 4th of April. And again, I'm aware a lot of those questions were very granular and they're getting into the meat of it. And, you know, depending on who's looking at things and how they cut the data. We're being joined by Euromonitor by Nick Steve on the 4th of April. And he's going to take us through a lovely presentation called, you know, are the clouds parting? Is it, you know, when are we coming out the other side of this chaos? So I'm sure he'll be able to answer some of those questions also about DIY trends, where we're going for 2023. So join us for that on the 4th of April. So listen, I'm Ken Hughes. I've enjoyed this immensely today, an amazing one today. And thank you for joining us as well. And I will see you for the next sessions, and I'll certainly see you in Berlin on the 14th, 16th of June. Bye-bye.